Government or public schooling in the United States began around 1850 in Massachusetts. It was resisted, sometimes with violence, by 80% of the state's population. The last bastion of liberty in the state was vanquished in the 1880s as children were marched off to school at gunpoint. Prior to compulsory schooling, the state's literacy rate was 98%. Today, it's 90%. It is important to note that our populace was more literate prior to government schooling. Further to this point, children who are home educated typically score 15 to 30 percentile points above government school students on standardized academic achievement tests, regardless of the homeschool parent's level of education or wealth. In addition, the financial costs are staggering. It costs $17,013 per student enrolled in government schools, while homeschoolers spend $700 to $1,800 per student. It used to be that young people learned at home and through apprenticeships. With an apprenticeship, you know exactly what you're learning. Homeschoolers outperform their government school peers and at a fraction of the cost. Are government or public schools successful? You might be thinking no, but I would argue that they are very successful. They're not successful at educating the public to be literate, creative, independent thinkers, but that's not the goal. According to John Taylor Gatto, former New York State Teacher of the Year in 1991, he said, "Schools are intended to produce through the application of formulas, formulaic human beings whose behavior can be predicted and controlled." We spend 13 years of our life in compulsory public schooling. What are we learning? What are we not learning? First and foremost, we learn to obey. Gustave Le Bon made the following observation about compulsory schooling 130 years ago. From the primary school till he leaves the university, a young man does nothing but acquire books by heart without his judgment or personal initiative being ever called into play. Education consists for him in reciting by heart and obeying. We're learning to be patriotic citizens who love our country unconditionally. Every day we stand and put our hands over our hearts and pledge allegiance to the United States of America. We learn biased accounts of history where America is always on the side of right. We learn about the importance of government and all the complexities of the bureaucracy that keeps us safe and prosperous. We don't learn about Operation Northwoods or the truth about the Lusitania or the truth about the Gulf of Tonkin incident or how currency is created. We don't learn about the Federal Reserve. We do learn to read and write, just not very well. The average American today reads at an 8th grade level. Comedian George Carlin summed it up.
They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect.
Now imagine you're a clever boy or girl in kindergarten. You receive gold stars and smiley face stickers for the right answers and no gold stars for the wrong answers. As you move up the grade levels, you receive pluses for the right answers and minuses for the wrong ones. Then you're evaluated more specifically with percentages and letter grades. Like Pavlov's dogs, you regurgitate the right answer, and you're fed positive reinforcement with a good grade. Do you question the information you're being fed by your master, or do you simply memorize and regurgitate? M. Jules Simon, a former French minister of public instruction, wrote, "Learning lessons, knowing by heart a grammar or a compendium, repeating well and imitating well, that is a ludicrous form of education whose every effort is an act of faith tacitly admitting the infallibility of the master, and whose only results are a belittling of ourselves and a rendering of us impotent." The smartest among us, those with the brain power to memorize and regurgitate massive quantities of information, have had the most positive reinforcement. They have the greatest initiative to believe what they've been taught. If they've been taught lies or the lessons they endured simply omitted important information, what does that say about their 4.0 GPA? What does that say about the system that praises them? The smartest among us rise to positions of power, then they perpetuate the status quo. They perpetuate the system that benefited them. And if the system proves to be unjust or evil, those in power likely won't see it. Smart people are gifted at rationalizing and defending their faulty beliefs. In addition, old-fashioned greed and comfort play a part. As Upton Sinclair said, "It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends upon his not understanding it."